Hi everyone, good evening. It's Hira here with Kareli, and it is about 6:30 on Friday. And I know it's Friday, but I really just want to very quickly cover this because I know that a lot of people are heading into interviews on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then rest of the week after. This week has been a really busy week preparing for interviews, and before we head into the weekend, I just really want to make sure that we've kind of touched upon. We want to go over some key things, and I always like to do these videos when I feel like I've said the same thing in these mocks. So if we've done, like, I don't know how many mocks I did this week, but I feel like 80% of them I was saying the exact same thing. It was part of like the advice to almost every candidate, and so that's a sign to me that it's probably worth putting it in a doing a video, because that means it's can be something that's helpful to everybody. And so what that is structure. Okay, number one, structure. Number two, structure, and number three, structure. That's basically what I came away with this week. Was, if there are three tips or three things I want to talk about, it's basically structure, structure, and structure. And so the reason why this is so important is because you don't, in these situations, you don't have a lot of time, right? You have maybe sometimes it's a couple of minutes. Sometimes it's maybe at most 5 minutes. Very often it's just maybe 30 seconds or 60 seconds, right? So you've got to really be able to get your point across quickly. The point also has to be clear, it has to be concise, and more than anything else, it also means that you have to be very selective, and you've got to pick the one or two things that are important, right? Like, all of us want to be comprehensive, right? That's normal. It's human instinct to want to cover everything and make sure that you've explained everything and covered all your bases. But that's the person who's speaking, right? As the person who's speaking or writing, or the author of the thoughts, we want to be comprehensive, right? We want to make sure that the person understands everything we're saying, and the background, and the this and the that, and you kind of want to like build up this big thing. You're just, it's kind of like this, I guess it's, we're by nature anxious that people, you don't want to just jump into it and just say something. You feel like you have to build up to it, right? Like you have to give the background and talk about some numbers and some evidence and all of this, and then get to the conclusion. And so, but these situations that we're talking about here, in terms of like interview situations, but really, honestly, I really do believe that this is true, even if it is, like, say, a cover letter, even if it is a networking conversation, even if it is just, just not, outside of the job world, it could be that you're writing a report or making a presentation. I still believe that the methodology of structure and structuring from the bottom up is better than the build up and getting to your conclusion, right? So let me explain what I mean by this. There are basically two ways, right, that you can communicate an idea to somebody, or a proposal, or say an answer to a question, or anything, right? Anything. When you basically open your mouth and speak, there are two ways that you could be presenting something. There are two ways that you could be answering a question that is being posed, right? And that is, the first way is to build up, right? The first way is to build up to your answer, right? So that's kind of what I already touched on before. Like you give some background, you give some detail, evidence, facts. You may present a couple of different options, and then you basically go forward and take the person through, and then you're like, okay, this is my conclusion, right? This is what I think is correct, and this is what I propose, or this is my answer, right? So you kind of basically build up to it. And the other way to do it is to start with the answer, right? So you start with it. You start with whatever the question might be. You start with the answer. Give the answer right away in the first 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And then you go into the details and the evidence and the whys and the hows and all of that, right? So you could take examples from anywhere, but let's start with one that's really, really obviously in front of our faces right now would be, say, the interview question. Why are you the best candidate for this job, or why should we hire you, or why do you believe that you're a good fit for this job? All these kinds of, like, why are you the best, or why are we the best? All these kinds of things essentially that are asking you to. All these questions have the same answer. I mean, they're all asking you to make a match between the job, the role, what's required, and then you, right? So we've covered this many times in many videos, and so I don't want to kind of repeat myself about like the sort of the structure to those kinds of interview questions, right? You could always, go to the Curly channel and you can see how, I kind of explain in detail about all of that. But what I want to mention for this particular conversation is that start with the answer. Okay, so the answer is, why do you want this job, or why are you the best candidate? The answer is because you are the best fit, and your skills and your experience are an excellent fit for this role, and therefore you can hit the ground running and you can contribute to the efforts of that team, of that organization. You can advance their goals, and basically be successful in accomplishing what the job needs done, right? That's always the answer. There's no other answer but that. The answer is always that you have a combination of skills and experience or whatever that makes you a very good fit. You believe it makes you a good fit for accomplishing what needs to be done in that job, right? As I always say, jobs are just problems to be solved, right? Every job is a problem to be solved. So there's the problem, and essentially what you're saying is you're the solution, right? That's all. That's what they need to know. That's what they're seeking. No matter what question they ask you, ultimately that's what they want to know, right? Whether you can do that job, whether you can do it very well, and whether you can do it better than anybody else that they are interviewing, right? So if you have that in mind, that's the answer, right? Now remember you said, right? In that answer you said you believe you have the skills and experience. That's part of the answer. Okay. So now, what do you mean by that? What are those skills and experiences? So here you combine this with another rule of mine, which is the rule of 3, and you say specifically, I would mention these 3 competencies or skills or areas of experience, whatever you want to call it, but basically these are the 3, right? And remember how we've talked about this a million times. We've talked about this in the concept of cover letters and all of that, where, you obviously have already read the job description and you know very well, if you had to bucket the 3 things they're looking for, you should by now, what those 3 things are, right? I mean, if it's consulting, clearly it's strong analytical skills. It's probably also, to some point, numerical quant, that kind of thing, models, data, all that. It's client skills, right? So that piece is either, you can talk about it in terms of either communication skills or people skills or client service skills or whatever fits given what you've done before, right? So that's a big part of the job. And then a third might be, like your preparation for this, right? It could be, you've got an MBA, or you've studied business, or you've already worked in business, or whatever, right? I don't know. I'm just making this up, but as quickly for the purposes